Welcome everyone to Tribe of Humankind. This is our third episode where we're going to gather to give ourselves a space to talk about what we see happening on the planet right now, where we think the human race is going. How is the awakening taking place? What is that looking like? What is that moving us into? What work or part do we play in that? What conversations can we be having right now that might speed up or assist or make more comfortable or relaxing this process that we are entering into? How can we support each other in it? These are the kind of conversations we're opening up this space to have. I want to thank my three guests tonight for taking the time out of their life to show up and participate in this conversation and to bring their hearts and their clarity and their voice to this. So with that, I'll open the floor and let my people introduce themselves. And maybe you can add, along with your introduction tonight, just speak a little bit to what you're feeling like you're here to create in 2023.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Mano. It's good to see you all. It's nice to be back together. Yeah, just always looking forward to exciting conversations and what will I be creating for 2023. A lot of things that's alive within me these days. It's what's coming up. It's life and death, like passing of something of old and then coming into something of new. And I don't exactly know what that would look like. That's a mystery that I'm also excited to see. But that seems to be the theme that's reoccurring, and I can really notice within myself how the old doesn't want to let go, or just want to hold on to every last bit as it can. Yet there is something within me that's eager to transmute. And there's a beautiful saying, every 7 year there's a new you, and I'm coming into my fourth 7 year. And I'm moving into the Saturn return, so everything is lining up, and just learning to trust, surrender, all the beautiful practices that I've learned. And that's what's present in my reality. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Mano.
I can go next. Rua, tuning in from Maui, Hawaii. And I'm here to create harmony, and I'm here to create counsel. I hosted a women's circle the other night, and we were around this fire, and I could feel it. I could feel the timeless realms. I could feel our higher selves tuning in. We were talking about myths, and we were telling these stories, and it's that's the council. It's this timeless space. And something that you said, Shane, when you introduced the call was the human race. And for some reason that really snagged me, because when we talk about personal growth and the soul, we talk about the path, the walking path, our walk. When we talk about the collective, we call it a race. And so for me, it's like, why are we racing, right? So why can't we call it the human walk and make that collective experience the same as the soul's journey? So that too, it's like bridging this experience of truth of the soul and a spiritual phenomenon embodied in this experience at a pace that we can actually integrate and not have to get somewhere.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rua.
Next. So I'm Aisha Javans, and I am living up north in California where the redwoods are. It's beautiful here. The weather, I will speak to this quickly because the weather has really been affecting my energy. I've noticed that, where I'm so in tune with Mother Gaia. So it's interesting what it's been bringing up for me lately, and but allowing her to show allowing her to show me aspects of myself that are new. And then that kind of blends in with what I'm trying to create or what I am creating in 2023. Some of the words that came up for me when I was meditating at the beginning of the year was creation in itself,
Mhm.
allowing my innocence, um, my inner child to create and be in wonderment more. So
Mhm.
more play. I think that's really important. I think the divine lives there and within us. Another thing is really just allowing my heart. I was mentioning this before we got on the call, before Rua had jumped on. Really allowing my heart to break open as
Mhm.
wide as it has ever, so that I can really learn to love myself in a way that I have never loved myself and that I have never been loved. And that has been something that's been a theme in my journey over the past couple of years, is to allow myself to trust in the worthiness that is within me to be loved in a
Mhm.
way that I've never been loved before. And I know that when I do that, it's going to translate out into the collective, and it's going to translate out in my sessions with my clients and just in general with those that I meet every day. Because I think that what we're focused on, sorry about my screen, what we're focused on is going to grow. And
Mhm.
so just really staying in that space of loving every aspect of myself is really important to me right now. Just that that love that is forgiving and all knowing and can see the impossible. That's really where I am. I'm almost in this space where I don't even know what it's going to look like yet, but I can feel the energy of it, and it's really hard to even describe. But I'm ready to just yeah, it just feels like this flooding open from my heart is really what it feels like right now. So I'm going to begin that journey this month with the Sophia Code, and I'm very very excited about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Aisha. Yeah, my name is Shane. Introduce myself. I'm in Kent, England, about an hour south of London right now. And here at my girlfriend's father's house, hosting the call tonight. Happy to be here. A little bit of what I'm calling in for 2023. Mm. Mm. I'm calling in like no more excuses for not showing up. Like whatever's not working in my life, I'm ready to be present for and to kind of fill in all those little missing gaps and to not make what I'm here to offer or give in too hard of a reach for people, to like meet them halfway or meet them a little bit more or show up and yeah, make it work this year. Like I really feel like it's time to birth things, and I'm ready to bring my attention and my awareness fully present to all the little steps in between that it takes to get there. And what's not working, to let it go and start something else and try that. And that's a little bit of what I'm feeling starting this new year. And I feel like there's already movement picking up, and excited for that. So like I'd like to pass the mic back around, and we'll kind of take a moment to host ourselves into presence, and just since it's just the time to speak to whatever is feeling most real or alive for us right now. Anything that's in our field, you know, work, family, relationships, life that's kind of been tugging at us. Anything big that's gone down since the last time we spoke in the circle. What's feeling most real and alive for you? There's a conversation, there's an argument, there's a stress, there's a medical condition. I don't know. So whatever's got your attention and your awareness, I just ask that you mention it now so that we can get it out in front of us and not have it like hidden, that we have to pretend it's not there while we have another conversation. So let's go ahead and speak about what's real and got a hold of our hearts or our bodies, our souls. I'll pass the mic to whoever's ready.
Yeah, thanks for that invitation, Shane. And like right before we got on this call, like I think it was maybe like 30 minutes before, we got a call saying my cousin's father, he's in serious condition. He's going in for his third surgery today. He had a bypass, like a surgery yesterday, and he's not in a good condition. And the doctor just told everyone that just tell everyone to come. Anyone that needs to see him, tell them to come over. So yeah, it's not looking good. So that seems to just to take priority over everything else right now, and just feeling into that for my cousin and the way that it puts on him. Because there's been like a lot of trauma that's in relationship to this person that's in the hospital. And just to give you a brief story, when my cousin was conceived, his father, who's in the hospital right now, like beat his mother to the point where the child almost died. Yet my cousin, his son, is being called to almost to his deathbed. And just all of that is coming back into into union. It's almost like you go see your father who almost killed you, yet he's dying now. Will you show up? How will you show up? All of that dynamic is present. So that's been the turning point. And thanks for asking. That's what I'm sitting with.
Is your cousin calling on you for some support right now, or?
Yeah, just a collective family support, just being there. I'm just someone to talk to, just someone to hold the space. And it's a hard time because there's obviously that emotion that's involved, no matter what, at the end of the day, it's his father. And it also ties back into, my own father, my relationship with my father, and how valuable that is. And even though it's not the greatest relationship, to understand that, my father is someone I still have in my life, and I can't amend my relationship with my father as long as I'm willing to let go of my differences and look at the beauty in it and hold that higher vision. So it's definitely a lot of reflection as I'm holding space for someone. It's also like I'm holding space for myself within this own container. So so that's what's like bringing up within my own self. And I noticed myself wanting to call my own father, and I did, and he didn't answer, and I was like, okay, I'll just leave it. And I'll try him again another time.
But, thought that was a sign from the universe, but I don't know.
Yeah, it really was. And it's a lot of different moving pieces that's coming through. And again, this is what I was meaning by like coming back to I want to transmute this ego, like I let this child that's mad at his father for all the ways he didn't show up, and allow that story to die. That's that aspect to transmute into something greater.
Thank you, Mono.
I'll go next. Oh, sorry, Ro, were you gonna go? Mano, that is very touching for many reasons. For me, I don't have a really relationship with my father, and I want one, and I've been missing him so much lately. That is very tender for me, and I won't even probably go down that road. It'll probably come up in another circle, but I love and appreciate the fact that you are so aware and open to just wanting to let go of your differences and love the child within you, because that's where it's going to start. And it just made me feel like a confirming that how I am showing up is enough, even if I'm not able to have a conversation with him. I think, I always send him love, and I always wish the best for him. And I'll even send him love texts, whether he responds to me or not. I just feel like love is powerful, and you never know the way that it's working on the other end. So thanks for sharing that with everything as well too with your family. So for me today, I just started my moon, and I am very clumsy and foggy and tender and raw. I literally don't even know what I'm going to say next. I'm really trusting in my heart space and being present and not judging myself of whether I am even able to deliver something profound and powerful. I'm just letting it go, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm having a lot of issues with my neck, which also is kind of like a vice. And it just is very hard for me sometimes to concentrate. But another thing where I am, it's some layers here. Just figured I'd share it all. And this feels personal to share, but that's what we're doing here, right? Is I've been having this reoccurring, and this always happens right around my moon and I think that a lot of women, when you're on your moon and they're PMSing or they're really going through and they're highly emotional, I actually think it's a gift. And I think it's a time when your womb is really speaking to you. And so instead of fighting it, instead of feeling like, oh, I hate this time of the month, or seeing it as a challenge or a bad thing, I've really finally learned how to lean into it. And whatever's coming up for me at that time, then I know that that is the most important thing for me to focus on within myself. And so what's been coming up is this message again. It's weird how this happens for me. When you talk about healing is not, straight line, it's a spiral, and things come up after you've dealt with them or thought you've put them to bed or healed them. So this message of, how do I word this? So in my last relationship, I was cheated on more than once, and thought being forgiving and just kept going and just trying to prove to myself that I could make this work and make this last. And it's a deep wound that I sometimes I'm completely like at peace with, and then other times, like right now, it really comes up and it's very real. And then the slightest thing that feels off in my present relationship, which is so beautiful and healthy and amazing, there's this voice that like, maybe there is something, maybe, and obviously there isn't, but it's like this aspect of myself that I'm like realizing it's probably going to take many rounds of sitting with her and healing her and validating her, and especially allowing her to be angry. And so it's very real for me. Even just dealing with anger at this point in my life, I was never allowed to be angry growing up, and that makes me feel emotional speaking about it, because it's like a whole new emotion that I am learning to be safe within, to validate myself in, and to not feel guilty or bad or out of control, and being okay with being out of control. And so, yeah, I'm a raw nerve today.
Yeah.
But I'm here and I'm present, and I love being here because it's so real. And I am really learning to honor myself and to be real with myself, And probably after the circle, I'll probably sit with myself in meditation and really allow that aspect of myself to be seen and heard, and then to validate her and acknowledge her, but then also I call it having a funeral for aspects of myself, that story is okay. I got it. It's good. Thank you so much for showing up again and allowing it to alchemize into something else. And it's again, like Mano was talking about, really learning to use the tools and the practices that we already have in place with what's coming up in real time, in our real life. That's where I am.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for showing up today and bringing that gift. I'm really grateful that you're taking the opportunity to speak to your moon time. And yeah, like if there's anything else you want to speak to, is the shift in your life where that became more of a focus for leading the way instead of something that was like a obstructing the way mentality kind of thing, or
Yeah,
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. So just really share right now. I started having my moon when I was 10 years old, and
Mhm.
it's been excruciating my whole life. It's been like I hated it my whole life. I was resistant to my womb. But what I've realized, so I began a 9 moons course here with this beautiful woman who's worked with these Guatemalan grandmothers, and her practice is so beautiful. And that was the first time I allowed myself to be in a circle with women, which was very vulnerable for me, but the biggest blessing I ever gave myself. And I really started to learn how to speak to the womb, to hear her, to not be in resistance to the energy, like to really realize how profound it is to have a womb, that it's a portal, that it's just like, wow, some of my power lives there. Okay. And also, a lot of my, the trauma from my lineage lives there too. Oh, this is also part of my purpose of really changing and being the change in my lineage, is through my womb space. And so that was probably when it first changed, just my whole perspective of it. And then when I had my miscarriages,
Mm.
I really stayed in this beautiful place of gratitude through every single one of them, which my practices have prepared me for. But I was tapping in every day in meditation. It was the only way for me to get through it. And I had the most amazing visions, the most amazing shifts within, because I was just so raw and free. And I depended on my womb. I was not here at all. I couldn't be here at all. I would not have been able to make it through that. So through my womb and my heart, I mean, I just created this relationship by trusting it to guide me, which I felt like it was just this beautiful divine energy that had encased me through that part of that journey. Um, and I really was able to see the gifts in it. And so again, just coming back to like really honoring and respecting and being awe of this energy that I contain, and really wanting to teach other women about it, because we're not taught about it at all, at least in our culture. And I think it's so important, especially like for younger women coming of age, to learn about that. So yeah, it's been it's been a huge thing for me on my journey to create that beautiful connection with my womb.
Mm. Thank you so much, Isha, for speaking to that. And like, yeah, that's the guidance that I've gotten over the years. Is yeah, it's the oracle time. So it's it's a place that we can all, men and women, can learn from if the more we pay attention to and let it teach us, then we get in alignment with life. And that's been my understanding with it. And I'm grateful to have you here and to be speaking on that. So thank you. And,
I can share on that a bit before I go into my personal presencing. Yeah, I have some strong boundaries and non-negotiables when I'm bleeding. I I did a 13-month moon journey called, she called it Seasons of the Cycles, and then she called it Fluency. And so for 13 months, we would do these series of rituals during our moon time. And some of those rituals were full 3-day retreats, no music, no technology, no entertainment of any kind, no books, nothing. You can have art supplies, you pre-make your food, you don't talk to anybody for 3 days. And it's the moon retreat. And so I committed to doing that, and it taught me a lot. And I just told the farm the other day, I'm like, hey, just to let you know, because I just committed to more work on the farm. I committed to full 4 days a week. And if you would have asked me a few months ago, I would have said I was not going to do that, but I did. And I said, here's my one stipulation. If you want me to work 4 days a week, I do not work during my blood time. I can let you know when that is, but I do not work on my blood time. This is strong, non-negotiable, because it is an oracle time. And I do very specific blood offerings with the earth You know, I save all of my blood and I use a cup inside and I offer it to different plants in different corners of the land in a very specific way. And if I try to do anything when I'm bleeding, it's more painful. So I've learned that the pain actually comes from resisting the moon time instead of leaning into the moon time. There's a lot of wisdom there, and there's no pain if I don't resist wisdom.
Mhm.
So I've had profound experiences with that. And as far as my personal drop in right now, there's a couple big pieces. One is that my beloved, who we've lived on the same land, two different properties over the course of 2 years. He's moving this weekend off the land, and we've lived in the same community for the last couple of years. And so it's just this experience of uncoupling and separating and finding each other's independence. But it's hard. And we've just been grieving for the last few days and holding each other and crying, and it's hard. And he's actually moving out today, so it's hitting him deeper than it's ever hit him. And I'm committed to sitting in a ceremony tonight on the other side of the island. And so there's a part of me that wants to follow through with that commitment and sit in the ceremony. And then there's a part of me that doesn't want to and wants to just be here for him and his process. And use the storm, that because there's storming here off and on, thunderstorms, flash flood warnings, and use that as an excuse to not go to the ceremony so that I could be with him. I'm in this process of, okay, is this a wound? Like, is this part of the codependency of like holding each other instead of holding ourselves? And is it actually best for me to go to ceremony even though it's storming and it's lightning and trees falling everywhere? So I'm just sitting with that. I actually haven't decided yet if I'm going to sit tonight, but I'm committed to. I said that I would.
Ooh, I love it, Rua. Thank you for that very real share. So, yeah.
Shane, I just wanted to share something because it's important. I also, after I did that first circle, I chose a year later to do another year long with Wise Womb, and it's led by Naomi Love, and I just want to mention here because she is amazing, and that actually took me even deeper within myself in places in my body I had not experienced, and really being able to see and really understand the importance and the sacredness of my body. And so I highly recommend that as well. It's called Wise Womb. You can find her on Instagram, and her name's Naomi Love, and that also was really life-changing for me too.
Yeah. Thank you both for your shares around that. I would love to maybe reintroduce later in our discussion today. We could talk about a little bit what society would look like if we built it around women taking space for their moon time, and what society looks like when it starts to pivot around that versus viewing it as a disruption to an agenda of society, and where we maybe start to get centered back with life. Go ahead.
We actually had a drum circle yesterday, and this brother came through teaching traditional African drumming. Mm-hmm. And there are specific songs for that they would play in celebration when someone would come into their moon time, or someone would be initiated in something, or there would be a win for the tribe, right? Because everyone's celebrating that. So then they would drum for days, and they would keep fire for days in that initiation process.
Ooh, love it. Yeah, thank you for calling that in. I think if we open our eyes, and we'll see that it's alive in many indigenous cultures, of how to honor this space and this time. And yeah, I've had a privilege of taking part in the moon dance down in Mexico for 4 years, and 2 years up in Canada, and that is centered around a 4-night dance for women to both learn to honor their moon time, but just to learn to honor themselves, and learn to honor women to take their stand within culture, to feel themselves being backed up by other women, and feel the support of men to be themselves without explanation or space to be. fully themselves and to grow from that place out. And I believe in that. And I believe that that's kind of maybe the center of taking care of life. And if we start from like that be the center of the spiral, life will find a pattern that makes more sense for the bigger collective. Maybe before I go much deeper, I just invite some reflection from Mano here while we're on this.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Moon cycle is something, it is a very, very powerful time, of the month. And there's actually a celebration in Sri Lanka, like whenever a woman experiences their first moon cycle, they pretty much invite like all the friends, and they actually have a big celebration. It's the moment a girl is becoming a woman. So as we're sharing that, like about the African drumming around the moon cycle, that's the first memory that just kind of popped into my head. And yeah, I mean, it's a topic I feel like we can dive much deeper into, and I really like the invitation to explore the possibility of seeing what would the society look like if you were to set this around around women's moon cycle, or like a having capacity to take time off from work, or just to be with themselves. So I'll wait till dive deeper into that, but for the time being, I think this is what's passing through me.
Yeah. Thank you, Mano. Thanks for speaking to it. Yeah, Rua, thanks for speaking to your process with your partner that you're parting ways with. I can feel the realness of that. As maybe almost 4 years ago, I parted ways with my partner of 4 years. And that's still very much alive, even now, 4 years later. I still remember as we start to make our own separate paths and go, it's not easy. And I still feel that pain in me 4 years later. It's still alive. And you learn love from another angle. I was like, But yeah, thank you for doing that big work as well, to keep your heart open to the unknown. I'll do a quick share of a little something that's real for me. I had 2 things that were similar. I got a phone call that my uncle died a couple days ago as well, and it's my father's oldest brother, and it's just our parents are. My father's parents have passed, and so now we're just kind of seeing the oldest brother of that next generation just died off, and it starts to get more real of my aunt, my dad are next in line, just a couple years down, and where that is for mortality. And then maybe my second half of my share is I had some stuff come up again around the ongoing healing work between me and my mother, and I was sharing with some friends that I'm a school that I'm a part of, that I was like doing my best to make my next payment for school. I had to like max out a credit card to make the next payment and negotiate payment plan. And it was like all this stress around money. And one of my fellow classmates was like, well, money has to do with your mother and your relationship with that. I'm like, oh, well, that's makes sense, because I don't even like my mother. And it's kind of a joke, kind of the realness of like, hey, that I have a lot of pain there that I'm always working at healing. And it put me into a process. So the next couple of days, I've been kind of working heavy with how I can heal that next layer of not kind of holding that against my mother anymore, whatever went down, and how I can show up and take care of myself for that, and stop holding a shield between me and her of like judgment, or like, hating on her or angry at her or, disappointed in her or whatever, like there's a lot of layers there that I can be like, oh, I wish she could have been a bigger person about this or that. And so I started to reclaim like a little bit of that in the last 24, 48 hours. And it's starting to shift where, yeah, I'm more ready to just let myself kind of in my mind's eye be more visually exposed to my mother and that I don't have to shield anything. Like if there's betrayal in there, if there's any of that, it's okay. Like that's just her being her and me being me. And I'm no longer need to like a shield in between her and I on that or a judgment. But something that's moving for me right now. So I just speak to that. And as we're talking parents and relationships and
I want to mirror that too. I've lived most of my adult life with no money. So I've chosen a kind of lifestyle to live close to the earth, which in this society particularly usually means that I'm zeroing out in my bank account quite a lot. And part of my commitment of working 4 days a week on the farm is that they want to pay us for all of our time. Like if you want to commit to the full thing, then we'll just pay you for all your time and then just deduct your rent. And I'm like, I don't need that much money, like I've just been working 2 days so that I don't need, I want to work as little as possible, which means I have very little, but now I don't have a choice. It's something I'm choosing framework. So I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this money? I don't have, any other expenses. I live a very simple life. And my mom just sent me a message a couple of days ago saying that she fell on some ice because it doesn't snow in Louisiana, but things get kind of iced over, and she fell and hit her head. And she's been having to still go to work because she takes care of my dad because he's paralyzed. So I'm realizing, oh, this is my opportunity to actually give back, to support her financially so that she can be more present for my dad, because I don't need the money, but I still have to do the work on the farm because I've committed to it. So I see and feel what you mean about the money thing with the mother, because it's coming up for me too. I have more money coming to me and I don't need this. Oh, I'll give it to my mom.
yeah, interesting. I'm still working with that connection. It's root chakra E. It's like having what you need, kind of being able to come home to mama and feel supported and loved or backed up in what you're doing in your life. Like got somebody supporting you in your dreams, or like, hey, go for it, or like, yeah, you can do it. I think maybe that's
I mean, a topic right there, because it's like the twisted ideas of value that create people feeling like they don't belong someplace because of how they feel like they have to get money to feel provided for and supported. That's its own thing.
I mean, it's definitely a beautiful topic, I guess, to explore. But before I go into that, I want to express, it's really beautiful what you're doing, Rua. I was really touched by your sentiment, like seeing the fact that the universe has provided. How you said, like a quote, like without a choice, you have to work extra days, but you didn't know that this was going to happen with your mother. And, it shows like a multiple layers of service. Your mother is still having to go to work with pain. It kind of relates back to like, women having to work even if you're on your period, but that's on another layer. But your mother's being service to your father and you're being service to your mother. I think it's just, yeah, it really touches my heart. So yeah, thanks for sharing that piece, and thanks for seeing the beauty in it and giving it back, because yeah, the parents have given so much, for so long to children, even though I don't think it's fair that, you had to leave the whole, yeah, Jehovah Witness, the whole thing, you have to be on your own. I'm sure that it's not easy. But you're willing to look beyond all of that and still show up for them. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I will say that wanting to be as far away as possible from the Jehovah's Witness religion actually allowed me to create a life to discover who I am, which I couldn't do in that framework. I just kept going west. I'm all the way out here in the middle of the ocean, we're the farthest away from any other landmass in the world. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and that's the only way that I could separate and tease out all those conditions and those programs that I was placed in.
Mm. Programs. That's a good word we could play with. Just to kind of, work with what we've got started here in our introductions, there's a lot of good material we can keep evolving in this conversation. And I guess I want to add one more prompt is I'm really curious, in these recorded videos to get started speaking to what we believe is happening on planet Earth, like kind of just a snapshot of like, what the hell's going on? What's your take on it? And like what's your understanding or belief system about where we are and what's happening, like what's going on Earth, like, and if we could weave that into the conversation right now, I would appreciate it. This kind of like, maybe I'll speak a couple words of my perspective, is that there's a high level of disconnect of the human being from its own natural cycles, from the earth, from each other. And I think there's a lack of a disconnect in the awareness of the full potential of the individual, and also of the collective species, of like where we could be going and what we could be doing. I feel like we're not even playing at all. I feel we're kind of stuck in a heads down autopilot, and we're slowly starting to look up and see new potentials. And that's a brief overview of a perspective I see on the earth, and I just kind of want to pass that around a little bit for other perspectives.
I have some things burning through. Enslavement is what's going on the planet, and of consciousness. And there are very particular things set in place, and we've each agreed to it. All of our souls have individual evolutionary points. So where we find ourselves and what situations we find ourselves in, it's its own little puzzle of how we're meant to unravel the limitations to discover that full potential that you were touching on. I've been shown a lot where I feel, it's not even think, what I see in my visions is that we are going into another mass reduction, similar to the ice age and the flood and all of these things that happens every few thousand years, but it's a rebalancing. And it comes from a necessity of when the level of unconsciousness gets to a certain point, it tips. And it's kind of like a forest fire. You just got to burn it and clear it, and then fertile soil will create anew. So I see that as an unavoidable thing. I think instead of a more natural disaster way that we've seen it happen before, I think it's going to be resources. I think imports and exports it's going to become real for people, that it's not sustainable of how we're nourishing ourselves, and all of the genetic modifications are not sustainable, and they're going to collapse. I see the monetary system collapsing. I'm just going to get right into it. I see us going back into a matriarchal society because we've been so heavily into a patriarchal society. It's going to swing the other way into a matriarchal society before it comes back into balance. And then we're going to see our lifespans extending much beyond 100 years, but few hundreds of years, because we're coming out of this dark age, another dark age. It's a cyclical process, and we're coming back into a golden age. But first we have to balance into the matriarch. And then once that gets balanced, the wounded feminine has to have a turn. The wounded masculines had a turn. It's not about sex, it's just about energy. And then when we come back into that homeostasis of harmony, and we come back to closer relationships with the earth, resources that are natural, community building, tribe formation, then our lifespans will extend. That's what I see.
Ah, beautiful. Thank you, Rua.
Yeah, that's a powerful sharing, Rua. Just gonna sit back in my chair, soaking a bit of that, you know. I mean, for me, you know, what I see, or like what I feel excited about. Maybe I'll start with like what I see first before I go into what I'm excited about. I see all of us as one, and I feel that in my core. Um, Imagine there's a massive collective consciousness, and we all have access to that. Yet we also given this game that we play with our own egoic entities or like egoic bodies. Um, and I see that like right now, currently, the earth itself, it's going through a massive transformation. As more being come into their heart, I'm noticing that it's shifting the frequency of the earth itself, so we become more aligned. But at the same time, I also see the material world, and what I mean by the material world, it's the transformation. It's mankind playing God with the innovation of AI and giving control. And I question what will happen to humanity once we reach that point of singularity where the machine that we created, it's all of a sudden smarter than us. And do we fall back or do we thrive with this? And I don't necessarily have the answers. I see myself more as an observer, kind of sitting back and just looking at all that is unfolding and trying to remove my biases. At the same time, there's a part of me that wants to survive through whatever this is. At the moment, I'm choosing to identify with it as me. Um, I want to see if I can come out as a victor through this process. I don't know what that means either. I think the one thing that does stand out is, am I able to sustain myself through this process? Um, and what does that look like? Is it meaning like being financially successful? There's no guarantee. I mean, there's nothing is guaranteed. Not knowing like what's going to happen, just like the storm that's happening outside in Hawaii right now. You know, there might be a flood. There might not be a flood. You know, so there's all these uncertainty, and how do we find certainty in the space of uncertainty? I think that's something I oftentimes contemplate. Because in order for me to like, you know, be or save someone, I must be able to sustain myself first. And, you know, I do feel that like my happy place is like where I'm just running around in the woods, just having fun, like, you know, being in my community, having meals together, you know, want to take time off, stay connected, letting go of fighting, be harmonious. Like, I think if I were to create a language, there wouldn't be even a word war that would exist. There's just pure harmony, right? But are all humans capable of doing that? If you were to let go of our monetary money system, how long will it take us before we turn barbaric for whatever reason? You know, these are the thoughts that's like goes through my head. Are we really in control? Or do we need these systems to keep us in control? So yeah, I mean, I don't have the answers. I have more questions through these inquiries, you know, and I think it's really up to us. And we saw what happened, you know. We saw what happens when we disagree on something. What do we do? Do we run away? Do we stay and like talk through it? And this is just the four of us here, and there are 8 billion of us, so it's getting like a little bit more hairy when we get into the nitty gritty. But I think I want to pause here and give some space to Aisha to see what's moving through her.
I love listening to both of you because I feel like it's so layered. And so for me, I always like to start on a cellular level. And one, I want to speak to enslavement, and one, I want to speak to control, because those are the things that my soul went, ooh, right when you said it. So on a cellular level, I truly feel that people, whether they realize it or not, I actually think so many people are starting to awaken to themselves, awaken to the light in themselves, which then is also shining the light on what's really happening, because truth can only be had or held or seen if we are in our truth, right? So now it's like the more people that are really being vocal about it, whether we agree with all perspectives of what the truth is or what is real or what is really happening, it's that in itself is happening. I think it's very powerful. And I think it's happening a lot more than we're actually being allowed to see. If
Mm.
you are on social media or in the news or whatever, that's obviously also control. So I think at this time in in history, Mother Earth's frequency is changing, and I truly believe that if you're not also changing your frequency within through dealing with the wound, dealing with the programming, really being able to honestly look at yourself and your choices, because everything is a choice. Whatever you want to believe or not believe, whatever action you want to take or non-action, that is a choice. I think that this system that's in place makes you feel like you don't have a choice, and the choices they give you is also not a choice for you. It's also part of a control system or an enslavement, right? I mean, and it begins with our food. It begins, so it's how we feed ourselves, like actual food. It's what we are feeding ourselves on in a book, in a screen. I think the screen is like my screen right now.
Yeah.
It's not real. Um, and so I think right now, the most important thing, I'm not going to let this mess
Yeah.
up my thought.
Yeah, keep the
I
thought.
think now the most important thing is to just step back with a really beautiful open heart. And I know this is really hard unless you haven't been practicing it. So that's why I think this starts on a cellular level within each of us. And this conversation is important because sometimes you don't even know where to start in that process. But once you do, you start to untangle the ways that, I just want to say the program. I sometimes saying matrix is funny to me because I think there's programs in place, and there's so many of them. They're passed down through our lineage, they're passed down through society. Um, and so I think it's really important to just look at your beliefs
Mhm.
with no judgment, and decide, is that my own, is that from my heart and my soul, or has that been given to me by my parents or by society, or is that something that's trauma based, that's come down into my lineage and I'm holding it still. I think it's so important to become super self-aware, and a lot of people are so stuck on these identities and these roles that they're playing, which is a false sense of self, false sense of their value. And I think it really controls a lot of the conversations that we're having or not having. So I think starting on that cellular level is extremely important for us to do, because once you really know who you are and you've experienced your own wisdom, your own knowing, and realize that you are just a part of source, you are a petal on the rose.
Mhm.
Whoa, that in itself, to understand your sovereignty and that the belief that you are controlled or that you are enslaved, that's like gone. And to get to that place, it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's like that's how we, as a soul, as a spirit, actually are. That's be outside of this body. So to be able to actually fully connect with who we really are inside of this beautiful body, I think that's so important right now. And it is hard to know how to achieve that awareness or understanding. And it's unique to everyone. There's not going to be one way to do it. And that's why I think many voices is important. Um, I did not go on that journey for a very long time because I didn't know how.
Mhm.
And I was too ashamed that I didn't know how. My
Mhm.
ego had me locked in. So I think the more that we just show up and really speak to what it is, and I think, I think Lex was right in last circle, these buzzwords. I think we should talk more about, like, what does that mean for us, ego? What does it mean to evolve? What does it mean to be enlightened or awakening or whatever? It's like, how did you get there? What was that like for you? What did you face? What were the challenges you faced? It's chaos. And I think in the chaos, like Rua was talking about, I do also believe that there's going to be it's, I don't want to say it's going to get worse before it's good. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos that needs to happen. Think about a star being formed. It's chaos. All these gases and all this, like, energy. and then it's like, and I truly believe that even in humankind journey right now, it's going so fast. Everything's happening so fast. It's so important to one understand that something is happening, maybe what's outside of our grasp, and we have to trust in the divine's purpose. But also understand that like it's important for us to slow down. I love that Rue was like, yeah, I don't need to make a lot of money. This is the lifestyle that I want. And even and you know, I think society makes us feel like you have to be doing all these things. And I know that you don't. But there's a lot of people that they just want to feel valued. They want to feel a part of something. And they don't even realize that it sucked them into this cycle, this vicious cycle of unhappiness and just getting lost the more that they stay on it. So I think it's important to speak about one, slowing down and getting back into the rhythms with Mother Nature, because she knows, right? That's how you start to begin to really understand, you know, what is real, to be able to hear, to be able to channel, because everyone has those capabilities. So coming back for me, I know I'm not speaking as broad as Rua did. I think it's so awesome that she has this whole vision. I have an idea of it, but it's not as clear, kind of like Mono. But I just am so in the present moment that I think it's so important for us to start on a cellular level, whoever that is for each of us in the collective. And then for those who have already started that journey, to just really show up in a lot of compassion and love to support and to let them know that they're not alone in it, you know. That's something important to me because I was in that space for a long time. It's yeah, it's collective effort.
Mm. Thank you.
Can I respond to that briefly, Shane, before you go on to the next thing? As I was listening, something that was really coming forth as you were reflecting on these ideas of sovereignty. I heard you say sovereignty, and you were speaking to control and reflecting on slavery, or this idea that we are beyond choice. And I know that none of us are any of those things. Like, we're all free, but it's a perception, right? Enslavement and control is an imposition from an external reality. And the only need for an external government is because individuals don't know how to govern themselves. Once individuals know how to govern themselves, then there won't be any external government. There won't be any externalized systems. There won't be a need for control and manipulation of any kind. But control and manipulation are created from a being not governing itself, and then multiple beings not governing itself. And so nature does it too. It's a pecking order. Oh, you don't want to take command of your own existence, then we'll just take you out, you know. And so if each person is fully embodied in their power, there is need for any manipulation, control, governance, or slavery, or any of those concepts coming from the external reality. They're magnetized from an internal disempowerment first.
Yeah, it's not even possible at that point. It's only a trap you can fall into when you're feeling the illusion of disconnection and the illusion of disempowerment. Then the big bad wolf can come in and oppress you. But if you're not under that delusion, the big bad wolf is not big, bad, or a threat, or tricky enough to deceive you out of giving away your power.
Yeah.
Need that as well. A few things come up for me. I think that it should alarm people that we live on a planet where there's so many different understandings of reality. There should be a little bit of concern there. We have much more in common than we are pretending. We have much more unification going on already, but to pretend like we're living in so many different realities is an illusion in itself. And I'm of the point now that like there doesn't need to be one truth. There can be like a circle 360 degrees perspective on any topic, and all those perspectives gathered together will give us the center of the eye vision of what's going on the planet. So it doesn't have to come from one person, but with all those perspectives, we could start to get a clearer vision of what's going on planet Earth. And that's why I really want to engage these conversations with as many as possible. Like, share with me what's happening, share our perspective. Together we get the clarity. You don't need to have someone else tell you what's happening. Gather it from your own heart. Listen to each other. We can pull that together. I think a real gift of exiting the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses, which I grew up in, and Aisha grew up in, and Rua grew up in. The real gift of that is being able to fully believe something. Your family, your community, everyone teaching that, telling you, you believing in it, and then realizing that, hey, that's not true. And walking away from it. And realizing that how easily you could live inside of that, and then see that your family and friends and community and people you love still live inside of that. And then you look out into the world and you see lots of slightly different programs running all over the planet. And people living inside these different programs that run their lives and their realities. And that is the gift, I think, of growing up inside of that and being able to walk away from it. As you can see that that's just what's happening everywhere on the planet. And that we have that choice to not give our power away to that.
That's really where it starts. The dogma is the thickest in the religions, and then the religions create very compliant beings that function in society by command.
We've got structures that operate every aspect of your life, your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your emotional. There's programs for all of them. And they keep you there, and you have to choose to step outside of them to learn how to connect with yourself directly with source and be that embodiment. I also see the entire human species as like one divine being, one aspect of the source consciousness living out a very intentional experience as the entire race of human beings on planet Earth. And I have no doubt that as a global organism, the human being and its divine roots and source is going to be fine and continue to live and grow and evolve spiritually. And that's hence the name of this conversation, that spiritual evolution of our species. But I also believe we're about to undergo a huge transition, a huge evolution, unlike we could imagine. And we're about to see the deconstruction of all the false, self-destructive systems that have been built up. And how we anchor our psyche, our sanity, our reality through those changes is going to be important. How we find it. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I just felt important. I heard Mano say earlier, I want to survive through it. And I don't know what that means, but I want to make it through, whatever that is, because we all know it's coming. We all see it and we don't know what it is, but we know it's coming. And what just came through for me really clearly is stay close to the earth as close as possible. And that's the way. If you want to make it through, then stay close to the earth way.
When you say stay close to the earth, what does that mean? Like,
know where your water comes from, know where your food comes from. Have good, close relationships with who surrounds you. Those three things guarantee we will make it through if we come together and we know where our food and our water come from.
And what's the timing of this, or is that something that was shown to you?
I don't have the timing. Sometimes my visions are 6 months out. Sometimes they're 6 years out. I don't have the timing. All I can do is see.
I'm keep hearing March, and I don't know if that's a fact, because that's something I keep hearing. Huh?
This year?
This year, yeah. But I don't
Yay!
know. Yeah.
Going to not have to, but I feel really solid because of where I am, you know. So for some people, March is like, oh fuck. But for me, I'm like, cool, I don't have to wait another 5 years, right? Because I'm already in a place where I know that it's like that tsunami that you spoke of. It's like dunking under the water and not getting hit by that thing, but being underneath it and then coming up once it passes. You know, I
Right.
feel really ready for that. And I want all of us to feel ready for that.
Mhm.
To that point about what Roa, sorry, is saying was, you know, about really knowing where your water comes from, your food. I think again that goes back to like what we're feeding ourselves. I think it's really important because there's so much that is changing now that and that they're putting into the food or how they're changing the food, and it does affect your physical body, which houses your spirit, it houses your soul, and your true ability to really tap into your truth. I mean, on that psychological level, on that spiritual level. I mean, it's powerful the different ways that it is being affected or trying to be controlled. And so, to even go further on that, I think really even knowing how to be in like a sacred ceremony with Mother Earth every day, I think is also really important. Like, we are guests here and we have forgotten that she does not need us, that we can go. She's a living being. She's agreed to allowing us to be here. And so I think it's so wild to me sometimes when you think about how society is so money and greed and power, control. It's like it's driven by those things, at least this reality that we've all grown up in. Um, and to think about like Mother Gaia is the complete opposite of that, but she's still able to hold space for all of what is happening so that what needs to happen can occur. And I think that when Rua talked about, yeah, if you can govern yourself, then there's no need for government. I completely agree with that. And that's where I think that that point where people are starting to realize, hey, actually, no, I do want to, this does feel better to me. I do trust this. And that was like a theme that came up as a Jehovah's Witness, where it was like they always made, there was so much shame and guilt for you to question anything. And if you did, it was, well, you don't have enough faith. And it's like this patriarchal way of being. And I didn't even see it at that time either. And so you can see how it's infused in so many different ways. And that's why that's so important. Like, yes, coming back even just to the earth. Rua, you're so right. Like there's so much ancient intelligence here and love, like love that we haven't even been able to even experience yet or understand. And yeah, coming back to those cellular levels are so important. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. I always have the vision of like, imagine like you know, moving through the woods and you stumble upon a hermit somewhere back there in the woods who's like keeping the spring nice and clean so that the water's flowing good. You're like, I don't know who this person is, but like I love them and so grateful for them, right? And I think that like parable, that vision is what we need to keep in mind. Like when Rua says, stay close to the earth, like stay close to life and support life. And if you're supporting life, life is going to be happy and supporting you. And any other life that encounters you is going to be happy to see you taking care of life. And that's what we've gotten disconnected from, is we're out here living in societies and systems that are in states of self-destruct, and we're not connected to life, and we're not taking care of life. We're not taking care of our own life or the earth or any of it. And as we move back into that, we won't be as affected by the metaphorical earthquakes happening across the planet, of the deconstruction of systems and everything collapsing, if we're close to taking care of life. And life is not going to abandon us in that moment either. You know, it's like, it's just, we're all getting reattuned to it. And I think as we understand that greater consciousness that we already are a part of, we're just expressions, extensions of that. And the more we harmonize our life, the more that flows through us to help the greater organism make this transition. And I think if we stay in tune with that, we're not so worried about, am I going to survive? Like, life is going to survive. Do we want to participate with it as it's surviving? What role do we want to play in being close with life as life is taking care of itself and awakening to its disconnectedness and its slumber?
Because it's true that the earth doesn't need us, but she really wants us here. We're her children. You know, she wants us here, but she's gonna do what she has to do. And so, Shane, when you say like staying close to life and contributing and that investing in the living nature instead of the dying nature, it's that. It's like, why did our soul come here? What are we contributing to life? What are we contributing to our community around us and the tribe and our individual nature and all of our relations? Like, what role do we want to play? We each have a very unique role. We're either in it, in our truth, or we're in some other role that someone told us we have to play. And we're not going to be fulfilled or happy until we're in our soul's mission of why we came here. In order to know what that is, we have to attune to the intuition in the heart and the womb at the same time. The collective consciousness has a very intricate and intentional way of bringing each of us here. And we have a reason that we've come here. So how do we want to contribute that? Being in that role is just being as uniquely ourselves as possible. And anything other than that is going to create more suffering.
Dream. So I too see the earth, Gaia, as its own consciousness. And she's very much the holding the birthplace for the human race to do this awakening of consciousness and this birthing into an awakened conscious state. Gaia, Mother Earth, is actively involved in that. She's nurturing that into being. She's holding the space for that to go down. It's her dream to see us blossom into that. And it's going to happen. She doesn't want to shake us off. She wants to see us fly. And she's holding on to the death throes to see that come through. And I believe, my understanding is that the human race's next evolution, we blend our collective consciousness with Gaia consciousness. And then that is the inheriting of the earth. The meek inheriting the earth is the ones who are awakened to life, coming together as one species that blends with Mother Earth. And as that, we take our stand in the galactic universe of, hey, we're awakened humans on planet Earth, ready to take responsibility for what's happening here and to take our place in the galactic community and say, like, hey, we know what's going on. We see our divinity within, and we're ready to take responsibility for it. And we're here to take care of Earth, and we're here to represent ourselves that way out there. And I just want to offer that vision out is how I understand it and see it. And it's not it's any scary road ahead of us. There's nothing but endless beauty on the backside of it, awaiting. Like, the real beginning of the exciting journey hasn't even started yet. And I just want to plant that seed in the consciousness. And I'll tag one last thing and we'll kind of wrap it up here. Is we started talking about the moon blood. And if we're not respecting that river of blood of life that we all entered into this world on, we're out of our center. It's that simple. And if that's uncomfortable for men or people to have a conversation around, check in with why.
How we treat the women is how we treat the animals, is how we treat the plants, is how we treat the earth.
It's life. If we're feeling that disconnected from it, we should check in.
I was just thinking, there's just so many stories that have been fed the masculine And what I mean by the masculine is men.
Mm.
I'm not speaking about it as an energy, unfortunately, and it's sad because there's a lot of lineages that carry really severe wounding, and in their need to feel that they belong, to feel that they are loved, they do view anything outside of them, like the woman or life or Mother Earth, as something that is out of their control and that has controlled them. And it's so important, like Rue was talking about at the beginning of conversation, about how she sees, us swinging over to this matriarchal society, and it does have to happen because it's going to be through the feminine, it's going to be through that energy that the masculine can heal. But there's so many stories that are just now just believed, and I think that us talking about them is so important, because I think even the masculine right now is severely wounded, and some of it is roles that masculine are playing, but there's a lot of the masculine that it's just trauma that they're holding. And I think it's so important, if you are awakening as a divine masculine, but also in your divine feminine energy, it's so important to be an example, and to bring your gifts and your healing to the world, because it's so needed. I mean, in our last circle, and I don't know if this, maybe I shouldn't ask this question right now, it might start a big conversation, but I just love how Rua's brain works, how her soul speaks. And so, when Lex brought up, that he believes in evil, and there's a lot of evil going on in the world, and Rua, that was very hard for her heart to hear, because that is a perspective in a lot of ways. That's like this mindset to continually see that, right? But because there is so many of these experiences that are happening because of these stories, I truly do believe too that love, it is the most powerful weapon, or is an everlasting energy. So of course it's the answer. And it is hard to hear someone when they can't see that, or they're not able to embody that yet. But I wonder what Rua's perspective is. I wanted to ask her this, because of the amount of suffering and wounding that's happened because of these stories being passed down. Like, how do we begin? How do we even begin to start addressing so much pain that is being held in the collective, and especially I think in the masculine? It's in the feminine too, because the masculine has oppressed the feminine for so long and tried to dim their power, because they are magical, they are life. But like, really, I'm just curious. I would love to hear Rua's point of view on, like, how do you believe that we start? Because it's because of the pain being on such a mass scale, currently.
Yeah, I want to say a thing first before I answer that, because I didn't get to say that on the recording, but I think it's important. I don't believe evil exists, is because I feel that evil is like sub-zero, like the cold. You can't measure it. It's an unmeasurable temperature. It's just so cold. It's sub-zero. So I see evil as the same way. It's just a lack of love, a lack of heat. It's an unmeasurable amount of lack of love that turns into something that we call evil. But it doesn't exist on itself. It's just so disconnected. So I wanted to speak to that first. And what you're speaking to around the wounded masculine, it's very simple. Some men forget where they come from. They come out of a vagina. They come out of a yoni. They wouldn't be here unless they go through that portal. Every sun of every galaxy of every solar system gets sucked back into a black hole, the galaxy, the yoni of the galaxy, to create a new universe. That's just the way that it is. It's all back to the feminine. She consumes everything and magnetizes things into herself. So it's two things. How do you start? You feel the pain. That's the only way. And the irony is that as a woman, my part in that masculine wounding is knowing my value and having boundaries. So in my role right now, I'm not a person that's going to be a mother and have children. If I was, then I would say, like, it goes into how the little boys are mothered and how they're nurtured. And that's an important part. That's not the role that I play. So the perspective that I'm going to speak to is how I engage sexually with men. If I allow someone to treat me a certain way that's disrespectful and not honoring, I'm actually perpetuating and enabling that wound. And so having really good boundaries with my body, and even if I'm not sexual with someone, even if someone's just in intimate proximity, close relationship with me, how do they talk to me? How do we engage? Like, what, are they coming in with an agenda? If I pick up on that agenda, do I speak to it, or am I just going to fawn? That's like the fourth way of a trauma response.
Yeah.
Into what they want. Am I just going to gratify that, like, oh, I'm here for this reason, and so I want this? Am I just going to give it to them, or am I going to portray to them, actually, here's the sacred feminine. The sacred feminine, this is a temple. You take your shoes off before you come in. We're going to sit down and have tea before we talk about sex, or whatever that is. It's just, there's still that little boy inside of the wounded adult men, not all of them, but the ones that you're speaking to, that you're saying, okay, where do we start? It's still tending to that little boy. And if they don't know how to tend to that little boy, and it's coming out in this sort of like tyrannical nature, or this instance of woundedness in many facets, these archetypes of neuroses, I don't like to always label them, because then that feels like a box. But for me as a woman, from my perspective, how do I start? Is I set parameters and boundaries and standards for how men engage with me. And that is what starts to get them to fathering that little boy that may have not been fathered. And they have to have willingness for that. If they don't have willingness for that, then, it's not mine to do. But also, I have a little boy, I have an inner masculine, and I have to father him and mother him. With my little girl too. For a long time, I thought I only had a little girl, but that's not true. Just because I'm a woman, yes, my little girl's more present, but I have a little boy too. And how has he been raised? Have I been abandoning him? What does he need? He didn't get that training, so it starts inward, and then it starts with my closest relationships.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome answer.
Inner child, so important. I like how you talked about the little boy too. I think that's like a new concept. I mean, I've always I'm really working on healing the masculine energy within me. But right when you said little boy, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I never really thought about it that way, and that little boys are never in our society allowed to feel. They just have to do and be. And it's like, I feel like I did that to that little boy within me for a lot of my life, and it's a neglect. I think it's an emotional neglect that has to change too in this society for men. But thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to hear your point of view.
Yeah, because we talk about the inner masculine and the divine union. How are you going to have a divine union with a wounded inner masculine? And that inner masculine got wounded from a young age.
Yes, absolutely.
Mano, do you have any reflections on this before we?
This is just a powerful, juicy conversation. I feel like I just want to dive right into it. It's fascinating you say that, because sometimes I notice myself, especially when you're talking about not just the inner, like an inner child, like, inner boy for me, or like my younger being, but also like there is that feminine aspect that lives within my masculine. Like, for example, it's like, whenever one of my ex would go through my partners would go through like their period or something, I'd make sure I make them like chocolate to make sure their like iron level is high. It's like, this is kind of the way, I didn't realize, this is kind of the way how I show up for my inner feminine, because I enjoy like doing these like a little thing. And whenever they're doing like a face mask or like things like that, like, can I join? But there's the masculine in me. It's not the very manly thing to say out loud, but there's that like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I want to take care of myself, like how they do, And I remember like my first relationship, she kind of looked at me like, So it was like first no's, and then it ended up turning into a yes. But right now this is like a normal conversation. Even before I start talking about it, I was like, can I share this, or should I wait till we hit stop recording button? but I'm grateful that it's coming out. I think it's very vital, very important that in the society that we are living in, if you really want to bring that pendulum back into center, back into neutrality, that both male and female come into their wholeness, recognizing that, okay, we have both aspects, both masculine and feminine. We may be in like a one body or the other. But yeah, really coming in harmonious within ourselves, harmonious within ourselves. That's represents the wholeness, right? So we're not looking for the other person to fill the other half, which, yeah. So these are amazing conversations. Yeah, I'm grateful you're tapping into it. What about you, Shane? Like, what are some of your thoughts? Because, as far as I can tell, you're very aligned, masculine. So with your both aspects of yourself.
Thank you, Mano. I like the conversation of the little boy and the little girl within. That resonates. It resonates. I've been through some different schools who have taught me both ways, taught me to tune into the little girl within me and the little boy within me at different times. I've never heard one school teach me both of them. So it's fun to consider them both together right now. But very much believe in that. There's, I believe in a free flow of the masculine and feminine going through. I think it manifests differently through the woman, through the man. It manifests differently, but it's those same currents moving through all of us. And there's a way for them to be expressed slightly differently, or have a different face or expression in them. But the inner current is there and strong. And I think those inner currents want to play together and they want to create together. And as much as the more they can communicate and be in that like psychic locked in dance together, the magic's happening. That's kind of my understanding with it. And if we get too polarized in one or the other, like I can only be a guy that looks like this, or I get uncomfortable or insecure, then we're gonna like narrow down our spectrum of human beingness a little too much. And if we're like, it's like we got it all, we have the full range. We're consciousness just has polarities that it manifests in. That's my thoughts on it. And like keep that in mind. You're very consciousness, masculine and feminine. It's good. I like the polarities. I think they're beautiful. I don't ever want to lose them. But also within, they want to be in communication. They don't want to be disconnected. They're one thing. It wants to be working together. That's my understanding with it. And I think with that, we've had a big juicy conversation tonight, and I would like to go ahead and bring it to a close, and to the point where we bring in our last few minutes where we'll go ahead and do our channeling right now. And for our audience, this is channeling of the higher self. It's a time to understand that we're all one big organism here, that spirit speaks through all of us collectively. And one of the intentions of this conversation is to access this divine God source energy that's within each of us and that is gathered here in this collective. And in this collective, there's a message trying to come through tonight for us here and for everybody that's ever going to listen. And if we can become a clear channel for a minute here, maybe we can help to give voice to the energetics of tonight's conversation. And so we're going to all do our best. We're just practicing and playing with this. And I encourage others to do this as well. We're going to take a minute to channel the clear voice of tonight's meaning and energetic signature. So we just give ourselves 30 to 60 seconds to center ourselves. Get in touch with your heart. Get in touch with your roots. They take you back to source. Get in touch with your guidance and your higher self and find your clear channel. When you have your clarity, go ahead and speak.
It's safe to say what we want to say. It's important to say what we need to say. The more thorough we can be with our truth, the more aligned we are in our path. That is where the ease and the grace are. It's important to speak what we need to say. It's safe to say what we want.
That's interesting. Oh, sorry, Shane. It's interesting that came through for her because it came through for me that it's safe to be seen. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting because that's what came through last time. I'm going to sit a little bit longer. But it was what came through for me too. What also came through for me when I just is that there was two things. If you are at a place where you want to make real change and you don't know where to start and the energy in the world is really closing in on you, remember that there are spirit guides, that there are angels, that there are angelic beings, and that there are myriads of benevolent beings that are watching over the earth right now and that are actually guiding us. And they are just waiting for you to tap into your gifts and into your power and into your true authentic voice, which kind of goes with what Rue was saying. Don't be afraid to tap into that and to speak it. Like the more that we all do that, that is also the catalyst for change, for real change. And the other thing was, what are you rooted in? Because whatever you're rooting your ideas in, your thoughts, your body, your health, your being, your spiritual essence, your spirit, whatever you're rooted in right now is going to decide of how you're going to feel with what is about to come. So just check in daily with yourself. Have a daily practice with yourself where you are really being brutally honest with love, no judgment, but start being honest. Stop lying to yourself. I lied to myself for a long time. It just felt safer. Like it's okay. That's okay. Well, that's just how it is. But I'll just keep showing up like this and not really go deeper. It's like just take it all off the table. The most radical change and the most radical thing you can do right now is like we were talking about, show up as who you are and just start moving forward in that way in your life. And you're not alone in it. I guess that was the message. Yeah. Just like be who you are. You're not alone.
Nice.
Thank you, Aisha. What's coming through for me is to let go of confusion and listen to your heart. The answers that you seek, they all lies within. That's what's present.
Nice. It's clear. Thank you, Manu. I got the image of us like folding into each other in a circle, like exhale, relax, like there's a trust building happening tonight. A sigh of some release. Like it doesn't have to be that hard. Like it's gentler and it's held, and there's sweetness there that we can lean into. And I felt that energy kind of coming in tonight, and it's yeah, it can feel good to do this walk together, to do this transition on planet Earth together. It can feel good. It can be one of the most exciting things we've ever done. It's the general vibe I was getting with my channel. Before we close out tonight, is there any final words? Anything that feels like it needs to be said to complete our evening?
I have something. It's not a channeling from my higher self, but more of an extension of my answer to the question that I answered before we shifted into this segment. Is it okay to change into that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's some things wanting to be clarified around when I was talking about the body being a temple and the woman being a representative of that standard in relationship to men. And said, we're going to have tea before we talk about sex. What I mean by having tea is like sometimes I take a full season, like 3 to 4 months before I become sexual with someone. And I want to clarify that. It's not like, oh, we're going to have tea and then we're going to get down. I'm really important.
Tea, but
Finish your tea. No, it's really important for this courting that we've lost in this society. And in my own experience, I call it intimacy range. Like, what about all that stuff that happens before sex? There's so much intimacy building that happens before penetration that's lost. And I think it's a huge proponent to holding those boundaries and standards when engaging with each other. Even if we never have sex with someone, but just getting to know somebody in a deep, intimate way without an agenda. I just want to clarify that. It's just really important for a woman to hold herself as that gateway before giving herself away, because I used to give myself away. I used to give my body away thinking that it would give me validation and give me value and bring me self-worth by giving sex to men, and it doesn't. So I just need to be really clear about that.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking that clarity. It's becoming more and more evident that this healing of the masculine and feminine within all of us that has all these woundings in our society are a big part of what are going to need to be addressed as we have these conversations. This is our healing journey, our evolution is finding our healing, our peace through sense making and growing with each other. Well, I hope everyone who's listened tonight has enjoyed, or whenever you listen, and I hope that people, if they have an opportunity to engage with questions or, to put their comments of things that they were stimulated by in this conversation tonight, to write them and include them so that this can become a growing conversation with more people. And I hope it becomes a good conversation starter for people within their relationships and their families and their communities. So thank you all for being here and for keeping the conversation going. And I send my blessing out to all of you and say goodbye.